All right, we can see that we were able to print all the items inside the cars array, right? We were able to print the BMW, Benz, Ford, Toyota, Rolls Royce, and Bentley, right? So that is that for loops, right? So let's talk about the for each loop, right? So the for each loop is basically this is the syntax for the for each loop, right? So we declare a string a variable, right? Then say colon names of cars, right? Then we use our open and close curly braces, right? So the reason for this string is because each item in the array is of data type string, right? So that's why we're using this string here, right? Then this integer, this I, represents each item inside the names of cars array, right? If so this is the syntax for the for each loop, right? So the for each loop is people prefer using the for loop because the for loop is basically faster than the for each loop, and the for loop is basically is used mostly for iterations that require you to update values, right? While the for each loop is mostly used for iterations around arrays or items, right? So that is the difference between the for loop and the for each loop. The for loop is faster than the for each loop, and the for loop is mostly used for iterations that require you to update some values, like we have in I plus plus, right? So that is the difference between the two of them. But outside of that, we can basically use the for loop to do whatever we can use the for each loop to do, and we can also use the for each loop to do whatever you can do with the for loop, right? So that is that. So let's see what we'll get from the for each loop. So if I print out the values of I, right, you see that we are going to have the same thing printed on the console. Yes, we have the same values printed on the console as what we had in the for loop, right? So that is basically it. If so, let me summarize what we discussed. So we discussed about the while loops. We discussed about the do while loop. We said that the while loop is different from the do while loop in the sense that in the do while loop run the you first execute the code before you check for the condition. Meanwhile, in the while loop, you first of all check for the condition before you execute the code, right? And we also discussed that we have what we call the for loops, right? We can that in the for loop we can have nested for loops inside of the for loop, and we also established the fact that the it is not good practice to have multiple nested for loops, right? It increases the time complexity of running the code, and it affects your machine's CPU negatively, right? We also discussed about the for each loop. We talked about the differences between the for each loop. We said that the differences between the for each loop and the for loop. We said that the for loop is faster than the for each loop, and the for loop is basically used for iterations that require value updates, right? And we also said that the for each loop is used for iterations in arrays or lists, right? So that's what we've discussed, right? So if you have any questions on this topic or any other topic you think you might want us to discuss, do well to drop it on the comment so that I would look at them, and we'll discuss them in the course, right? In the coming videos, like I'll do a video for whatever comment you have or whatever video you want me to talk about, right? So that is that for today's course. I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.